I don't know if I'm the first, but maybe among the first to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. This is a great week, great time of the year. And you might have noticed the theme for today is Thanksgiving, all the great songs that Dale's leading us in, the scriptures, the prayers, kind of focusing our hearts in on a spirit, a heart of gratitude, of thanksgiving. And I believe that's what the Spirit tries to foster in us, not just today because it's that time of year of Thanksgiving, but each day, each week that we live as Christians. I want to begin with a short exercise. This is a short one, like 10 seconds. I just want you to lean to the person next to you, or if you want to stretch your legs, you can stand up. Just lean over and say to your neighbor something for which you are thankful. What's going on? I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for you.
I'm thankful for you too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thankful I get opportunities to meet you guys a long time ago, to share in your life, be a part of your wedding.
I'm thankful for you to marry us.
Yeah. And for our friendship.
Yeah. No doubt.
Think we not gonna get that.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful for that too. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'll talk to you guys after. Okay. It's okay. Don't let me shut you down. All right. So, guess what we just did? We just engaged in one of the most important and powerful and transformative things that we can do as human beings. The attitude, the act of gratitude, of thanksgiving, has the power to transform. You start doing that in your life, and there's many studies about that. I'm not going to quote all of them, but having a heart of gratitude, or if you like rhymes, attitude of gratitude, that's important. That creates physical, emotional health, psychological health in people. God designed us that way. We are designed to be people who recognize what we have and give thanks, express gratitude. And it changes. We all know that gratitude, when I am in a situation and I ask myself, for what am I thankful? That not only changes my perception of the situation, but it also changes me, who I am. It changes you, who you are. So, that's the easiest sermon in the world, right? We all know that, so let's just all do it. Except it's not always that easy, right? We know, or I know, maybe you're different than I am, but my family knows, especially on a week like this where we're getting ready for a road trip and going to be driving on the interstate with a billion other people and all that stuff. Gratitude, thanksgiving, is not always my forte in those situations. There's plenty of stuff that happens in life that gives us an excuse to focus on the negative and to cloud our spirit of gratitude, of thanksgiving. And that's normal too. That's what it means to be a human. There's the good and there's the bad, and we struggle with how to act and react in any given circumstance. So it's not that easy. This week, for example, in my life, I got a letter in the mail, and I have been summoned for jury duty, right? Now, most people would say, "Oh yeah, that's horrible." I actually want to do jury duty. This is my life's dream come true. I'm like already 100 years old, and I haven't ever been called for jury duty yet, and I've always wanted to. Ever since I was young, I just thought that'd be so cool, and you get to see how this system works, and it's like the foundation of our justice system, and that it's an honor to do that, and all that stuff. I like jury duty. I've never done it. Maybe after I do it, won't like it, but so that's not the bad part. That's good. I got called for jury duty. The problem is, down the page, they list the dates that I was summoned for jury duty. And it happens to be December 23rd through January 3rd. The very dates where we, as a family, go to Wisconsin and spend family, holidays with our family in Wisconsin. Now I'm not in a good mood. Now my attitude is being challenged, right? That happens to all of us. And it doesn't, the end of the story turns out all right. I got it. I was able to postpone the dates to April or something, okay? But that's not the point. The point is, in that moment, when I saw the dates for that, I have a choice I can make. What can I do? Can I think about something? Is it possible for me to have gratitude, to be grateful for anything in my life in this situation, even though there's a huge inconvenience, annoyance, something that I don't like? And that's such an innocent, trivial thing. Oh, jury duty. What about the real stuff that we struggle with in life? With the physical, medical, spiritual, psychological, emotional, relational stuff that we go through as humans. What about those situations? Can I face those and still find a way to express gratitude and thanksgiving? I think about George Stegera today when he was walking in, and this man is exactly what I picture this to be. He has plenty of reason to complain, to have a poor attitude. He has some, physical ailments that he's dealing with. But all he does is smile and shake your hand, tell you a joke, and you can tell he loves you, misses being here. That's the attitude of Christ. And that thanksgiving, that heart of gratitude transforms him and makes him a better, more Christ-like person. And it also has the power to transform the people who come in contact with him. I think the same thing is true of Chris Stegerda. All of the things that she goes through and deals with. All of the stresses and the worries and the things that weigh on her. And yet she has this attitude of Christ, the Spirit of Christ. That's the work of the Spirit. And that affects and changes and transforms her and the people around her. This is the kind of stuff that Paul is talking about in Philippians chapter 4. I want to read a few verses here in Philippians chapter 4. We can start in verse 4. It's hard to figure out a place to start in Philippians, but we'll start in verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Okay, that's enough right there, right? That's a big deal. Rejoice. It's so important that Paul doesn't feel bad about repeating it. In fact, he is compelled to repeat it. Rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord. Occasionally when you feel like it. Oh, hold on a second. Rejoice in the Lord always. Okay. Sorry. Rejoice in the Lord always. What is he underscoring there? The rejoice part or the always part? I will say it again. rejoice. He doesn't have a problem repeating that to these Christians because he knows it's difficult. He knows that to some people in the world, this just wouldn't make sense. How could you possibly find a reason to rejoice in your situation, with what you're going through, with the things that you're facing? But Paul says, rejoice in the Lord always. And in fact, I'll say it twice, rejoice. The prerequisite for this joy, for this rejoicing, is not comfort. Paul doesn't say, hey, I noticed you're having a good week. I noticed everything is perfect in your life. Let's take some time to rejoice. The prerequisite for rejoicing is not comfort. The prerequisite for joy is gratitude, is thanksgiving. That's why these Christians can do what Paul is saying to do. That's why Paul can do it while he's sitting in a jail cell. It doesn't have anything to do with our comfort, our present situation. It has to do with our heart and our perspective. Gratitude and thanksgiving enable us to find joy, to be able to rejoice in the Lord, always, no matter the situation. He continues, let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Okay, this has already been difficult, but now, verse 6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. Be anxious for nothing. Instead, let your requests be made known to God with thanksgiving. The antithesis of anxiety is thanksgiving. How much anxiety do we face, do we struggle with in our life? How many worries and unknowns do we struggle with? Do we lay in bed on our pillow awake thinking about? It's in those moments that Paul calls us to stop and to give thanks, to look around and to say, for what am I thankful? And when we can find that, when we can do that, when we can have a heart of gratitude, we find joy. We find peace, even in the most difficult and challenging of circumstances. And that's exactly what he says next. When you do this, when you're anxious for nothing, and rather pray, petition God with thanksgiving, verse 7, and then the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Our hearts and our minds need to be guarded from this negativity, from all this stuff, the anxiety of life. And it's the peace of God that guards us from coming under attack there. And that peace comes to us when we practice thanksgiving on a daily basis. It's about the heart. It's about the mind. It's about what we focus on. It's about what we think about. And so Paul says, finally, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, if anything worthy of praise, think about that stuff. Dwell on those things. Meditate on those sort of things. Verse 9, the things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. There's an old proverb that talks about two arrows in life. Two arrows that hit us, pierce us as human beings. The first one is inevitable. It happens to all of us. This is the pain of life, the sorrow, the sadness, the disappointment, the grief, the loss that all of us know. all of us experience as humans. You cannot avoid that first arrow because we are humans. But the second arrow that pierces us, strikes us as human beings, is of a different sort. The second arrow is the way that we respond to the first arrow. And the second arrow is optional. You don't have to be struck by this one. But this second arrow is the self-loathing, is the anger, the fear, the anxiety, the resentment, the bitterness that we experience, that we choose in response to the first arrow. What do I do with the suffering and pain and loss that I experience in life? What is my response? And you and I have seen different types of people in life respond differently over time, over the years. And we've seen the product of a person who lives a life of resentment and bitterness and what they become. And we've seen the product of a person over the years who lives a life of gratitude, of thanksgiving, of joy, of peace. And we see who they have become as well. This second arrow is optional. You don't have to be struck by it. It only comes when we respond with that heart of bitterness. When we look at our situation and we begin to foster hatred or loathing for self, for others, resentment for other people, bitterness, anger, fear, anxiety. Those are choices that we make. And those too affect who we are. One of the great Christians of the last generation or so, Henry Nouwen, he says that the great challenge in life, the great challenge is living your wounds through instead of thinking them through. What does he mean by that? The great challenge that we face as humans is there will be wounds. The challenge is living those through rather than thinking those through. I can think about them, analyze them, respond to them in a negative way, or I can actually lean into the wounds that I experience and live them through, knowing, as Paul says, that the God of peace will be near me as I do it. I don't try to ignore those things and push them away and distance myself from the pain that I inevitably experience, the arrow that inevitably hits me in life. I don't reject it out of fear or anger or bitterness. I don't treat other people differently because these things happen to me in my life. What I do is lean into and live into and live through those wounds, as Nouwen says. And when we do that, the God of peace walks with us. The very God who, as a resurrected Lord, says, I choose to show and display and bear my wounds. Here they are. See them, touch them. Jesus doesn't ignore the wounds of life. In fact, he could have probably decided to have whatever kind of body he wanted to. But he said, no, these are important. These wounds right here, they're a part of who I am. They're a part of me, a part of my story. I'm not going to ignore them. I'm going to live them. And I want people to know about them, but they don't define who I am. What defines me is the God of peace. And the peace, exactly the thing that he gives and breathes onto his disciples as that resurrected Lord in those moments, is what he's about. Look at my wounds. Experience the peace of God. We will have the wounds. We don't need to ignore them. We don't need to analyze them as much as we need to live them out. and have a spirit of thanksgiving. And when we do, the peace of God will find us, will transform us. We'll close by reading this text one more time. Let's really put this deep down into our heart. I challenge all of us. This is Philippians 4. Make this a part of your Thanksgiving meditation this year. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all. The Lord is near. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell and meditate on these things. The things you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Happy Thanksgiving.